He's Rick Tyler.
And he's Dan Cashman.
And I'm Larry Barker, CEO of Machias Savings Bank. And I'm on the Ric and Dan Show.
In Maine, we often hear,
"You can't get there from here."
These are the stories of the risk takers,
The trailblazers.
those who turn obstacles into opportunities
every day and found their way
to get there from here.
And today,
they're on the Ric and Dan Show.
you were recruited out of a blueberry field.
I was. Ed Hennessey.
How'd that conversation go?
You know, that was, there's a bit of a story there. I raked for Ed, working so hard for that money. Of course, he was closer to home. You didn't have to drive as far. So I worked at a motel in town, 10 to 6 shift. I own that motel now. That's another story.
I love that.
So I night clerk, it was my best job. I mean, it was a cot out back.
I thought it was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We were going to ask, though.
It was, yeah. Caught out back. So you could, if there weren't any customers coming in, you could sleep 5 or 6 hours anyway. So 6 o'clock, I grabbed my buckets, headed to the blueberry field. So 6:45, I'm walking across the field. Hennessey comes, Barker, where you been? Everybody else has been there for an hour. He said, I've been working. What do you mean you've been working? Well, I was at the motel from 10 to 6. And so around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd gather my buckets up and head for my car. Barker, where you going? I mean, you can hear Ed, now. I said, well, geez, I'm going to work. What do you mean you're going to work? Well, I worked the 4 to 9 shift at Helen's. And then I went to the motel, and then I went to the blueberry field. And he saw me do that for, a couple of weeks and decided maybe I was interested in working. And so I think it was my work ethic that caught his attention. And he, approached me in the field toward the end of the season and said, hey, if you ever consider working at the bank, come see me. And that was the extent of the conversation. I had no interest in banking, never thought about banking. I mean, I was interested in business, and I respected successful business people. Ed was a big figure in town, obviously, and really, gained a lot of respect for him in the blueberry field, because the bankers would stop by once in a while with their ties and ask him some questions. And he was the only person in Washington County I knew that had a cell phone in his truck. So he'd leave the door open, that phone would ring, he'd run for it, and he'd answer that phone while he was on the blueberry field. And so I was pretty impressed with Ed and his passion for customer experience and his work ethic as well. I think he had the whitest legs on the blueberry field with his black socks up to his knees. And I mean, that was
like every dad.
I was embarrassed for him,
every dad.
So in a nutshell, that's that story. And that was August of 91. I went to see Ed a few weeks later. Started at the bank in October of 1991. He introduced me to my new boss. My new boss said, "Do you know what a mortgage is?" I said, "Yeah." I went home that night and looked it up. But Ed said he doesn't know a thing about banking, but he's a hell of a blueberry raker. Here you go. And that was the start of the
Do you think it was just the work ethic that he saw in you and said, I want that man on my team?
I really do. Ed had an eye for work ethic. I mean, he picked people off the clam flats and the meat rooms. And I mean, that's where he built his team. I mean, his leadership team before me, one of them was a used car salesman. My boss at the time worked for Patton. He was a forester. And so, Ed was just always scanning for talent.
When you say Patton, you mean the town, not the general?
No, I mean it was called Patton Land Company at the time.
Okay.
They did a lot of development, and this guy was a forester. And so Ed would always be looking for somebody that wanted to work.
Did you enjoy that style of work, raking blueberries and working at Helen's? I mean, they're obviously two very different things, but
yeah.
Did you enjoy those jobs when you had them?
The Helen's restaurant. So my mother owned Helen's. She started out in the dish room in '78 when we moved down. That's another story. So that was a fill-in. I was going to school, kind of between jobs, and that was a bit of a fill-in. But that motel job, I kept that for a long time. My wife made me give it up when we got married. I'd still be going. I mean, yeah.
When you were at Helen's, did you recognize the blueberries that you'd rake that day suddenly baked into a pie?
I didn't even want to look at them.
Really?
I mean, the blisters on my hands and the aching back. I mean, there's nothing like raking blueberries.
Can you eat blueberries now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I ate them in the field. Yeah, for sure. And that blueberry pie is still one of my favorites.
That's probably why Ed Hennessey was yelling at you.
It's possible.
Barker, you have this blue around your lips.
He'd yell at you if you missed some. Hey, you want to clean these up back here. Yeah.
So you kept the, I want to say motel gig, but let's call it hospitality. You kept the hospitality gig there as you were working at the bank. And how long did you carry that for?
Years. Like I said, that was, at the time it was, I think my paycheck was $100, but I just, it was the easiest $100 I made. We don't even have a night clerk at the motel anymore, post-pandemic, of course. Yeah. We figured out we didn't need it. But, my uncle owned the hotel at the time, and he had a night clerk for 20 years.
Wow. The hands-on labor, though, of the blueberry fields, there are people I know that just love any type of hands-on labor, whether it be yard work or fixing stuff or raking blueberries or picking potatoes. Did you enjoy that work, or do you find yourself enjoying the office job and the customer service job and the leadership of the bank?
What I enjoyed about it, I still enjoy physical labor, but what I enjoyed about it most is the piecemeal, and I was in control of how much money I was going to make. So, as opposed to the $6 an hour I made when I started at the bank, it was, hey, if I rake 100 boxes, I've got $300 coming to me. And so you really controlled your destiny that way. It was hard work. It was a grind. I grew up in it, though. My grandfather raked blueberries into his 80s. And so, we started doing it pretty young. And I mean, you were always gung-ho for that first day. I mean, that was exciting. I mean, and of course, we bought our school clothes when we first started doing it. We worked.
You made a reference a moment ago about moving to Machias.
Yeah.
And I think you were there when you were, what, 9 or 10?
10. We moved to Machias when I was 10. From Bangor. My parents were from Lubec. Grew up in Lubec. My father went into the military. He was in Vietnam. So I ended up being born at Fort Dix, New Jersey. And it's a fairly well-kept secret. I think a lot of people wouldn't know that. I think I grew up in down East Maine and been there all my life. But Fort Dix, New Jersey, Connecticut for a short stint, and then to Bangor. I lived out at Cape Park for a while. So when I was 6, my father, who was an alcoholic and liked to chase girls, left. And so my mother found her next husband, who also liked the bottle a little too much, and it wasn't the girls that were a problem, it was the gambling. So he didn't have any money to pay rent. So every 6 to 8 months, we got a new bedroom, and we moved to a new house. So I think I went to 7 different elementary schools in the greater Bangor area during that period of time, even did a stint in Hudson, stint in East Corinth. We didn't know he wasn't paying the rent at the time. We just knew we were going to a new house and pretty young at the time. But my mother finally kicked him out. We moved to Machias. My grandparents were in Machias. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we moved to Machias. She started out in the dish room, ended up waiting tables, doing payroll, taking care of other things, and eventually bought the business in 87.
I wonder where you got your work ethic, but I think you just answered it for us.
I was fortunate. My aunts, uncles, 2 sets of aunts and uncles that were great mentors. My grandparents, phenomenal. My mother was a workhorse for years. Yep.
You almost kind of had to be, though. There was no other option other than to be a workhorse.
I think that's a great question, Dan. And I would say, into my early 20s is when I met my wife, and then especially when I started having children. I mean, I just really wanted to provide a good life for them. Financial independence was high on my list. We didn't have much growing up. Mm-hmm. My mother was on food stamps for a while, during this earlier years in the Bangor area. Mm-hmm. So, I always look forward to Christmas because my cousin was going to get a new pair of bean boots, which meant I was going to get his old ones. And they were pretty good shape, those old bean boots. So anyway, that was kind of what it was like for us growing up. So, the only thing I could control was my work ethic. And boy, we and my wife was the same way. She's a workhorse as well. And so we were a hell of a team, and we went to work.
How did you not let it go too far? How did you not reach burnout?
That's a great question. I didn't not reach burnout. I did reach burnout. It's really interesting. I read a book recently called Performance Paradox, and one of the concepts in the book that he lays out is chronic performance, and that was me. I mean, for let's say decades. First 30 years of my career at the bank, it was always on. And on top of that, I was a great critic of myself. And so, I don't, maybe something to do with growing up. I mean, we had some traumatic events along the way. So I think I developed this pattern of, always trying to anticipate when the next shoe was going to drop and where it was going to drop. And so, the first 3 decades of my career, I had enough energy to get away with that. Between the grind and the working and being on all the time, call it chronic performance.
Yeah.
And so about 30 years in, I was at lunch with my board chair, Bob Foster, who's just been a fantastic resource for me. Great guy, great leader. So I go home at the end of the day, just having the energy left. I was done. And that had been going on for a few years at that level of exhaustion. And so I said to Bob, I said, I'm going to give you 3 more years. I'm worn out. Just don't want to grind, don't want to thrash like this anymore. And Bob, he's taking this all in. He looks at me very calmly and he says, you're in charge. And that dropped on me like a bomb. It just had a profound impact on me, and not necessarily overnight. But as I thought about that and reflected on that, I mean, it was just a defining moment for me. He was so right. And, so it was at that period. And he wasn't just right about the bank. Sure, I was the CEO of the bank. I was in charge of the bank. Mm-hmm. But I was also in charge of myself outside of the bank. And I had never taken time to exercise. I didn't have time for that. We got to save that energy for it. I didn't have enough energy for it. I mean, we were going, and we were going to be financially successful. We were going to be successful in the career. And so I really took that to heart. I heard something recently. It was not changing is a choice. And so it's, Bob had shared his thing, you're in charge. And then I just started, it was like a domino. I started, seeing and reading these different things. I said, gosh, it's time to make some changes. And so it wasn't necessarily that I needed to stop working. I just needed to change the way I was doing it. I needed to start focusing on doing the things that I enjoyed most, and the things that were draining my energy, doing those less. And so, Bob's advice as well, set it up the way you want it. You're in charge. So I started setting it up the way I wanted it, stopped doing some of the things that were draining for me, started taking time for myself on a daily basis. So it was a game-changing moment.
What does that look like, taking time for yourself on a daily basis? What is it?
Because we need to take
doing?
notes on that for ourselves. Okay.
I know. For me, it's pounding down a few bags of beef jerky.
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
That's good stuff. I don't mind a little jerky now and then.
Yeah. I like a lot of it myself. But what do you do for yourself, though? What are the things that you take time for?
Reading, learning, growing, just not being on all the time. I've always been a student of personal growth and development. I mean, you can't name any books that I haven't read, any podcast I haven't listened to. I mean, I've just been hungry for that stuff my whole life. So TJ Holloway was at a bank event recently. Good friend of mine. He was an executive coach for me for quite a period of time. And his message was, you got to get serious. And I got serious about making some changes that restored my energy to a place that where I am today is enjoying leadership more than I have in my entire career. I've got more energy. And so I take time for myself every day. We're up at 5 o'clock. 5 to 6 is coffee with the wife. 6 to 7, I'm in my man cave, 20, 30 minutes of meditation, stretching. Some would call it yoga. I call it stretching. It's much cooler.
Yeah, it's like men don't keep diaries. We have journals.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
I go for a walk. That's my best time. No more alcohol. And I don't have anything against alcohol. In fact, I love to have a few drinks with friends, but it wasn't good for me. I mean, it plugged my sinuses, made my heart race. I didn't sleep. And again, I could get away with that from, up to age 50. Can't get away with it anymore. You got to watch that energy a little closer. And so I gave it up altogether. And, hard at first because, I don't want to be a prude. I'm not that guy, but just wasn't good for me. So I stopped doing that. And I would say, all of these things together, Dan, compound. Not only compound to get it compound every day. And it's, personal integrity to yourself and keeping the promises that you made to yourself builds that integrity, puts deposits into that personal integrity account on a daily basis, grows confidence. It's just, it really has compounded for me over the last 5 years, and I'm in a much different place today.
Any point in time when you were facing and seeing the grind, was your spouse saying to you, Larry, you need to make some changes. I got to get you to slow down. I need you.
I'm still saying that to her now. I mean, I'm telling you, the first year we were married, we built a house in 1992. That winter, we kind of changed by oil.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so we went on this path for a long time. Mm-hmm. And, we get comfortable, and then we need another challenge. I mean, we like to have something to get us out of bed in the morning, and we thrive on it and have for years. No, she's a workhorse as well. But certainly, supportive of, whatever I need to do to be in a place where I'm, in harmony with myself and happy with what's going on.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And the kids are all in line with that.
Oh, yeah.
All 7 of them? 7? Is that the number?
There is 7. We're overachievers. I mean, we covered that already.
How many bathrooms are in that house that you built?
Right. There are 3. That's tight at times. But yeah, first 3 children biological, the last 4 adopted. My 19-year-old's from Guatemala, and my 14-year-old was born in Portland. And then two girls joined us, a couple of years ago now. Ages, don't quote me on this. I have to use Outlook to keep track of birthdays because it's
understood.
It's too much for me.
It's like that holiday a day calendar. You got the same with the birthdays. You got one every day.
That's
right. See whose it is.
They're 11 and 7, and so the youngest, the 2 girls, and my 14-year-old from drug addiction scenarios, just nasty situations. So it's been a great experience for the entire family.
Is that what drew you to adoption?
What drew me to adoption was my wife's passion for wanting to do it.
Okay.
And she's the kind of person that, if she was driving across the dike in the Machias and there was a litter of puppies on the side of the road, she'd stop and take all of them. So when she first brought this up, I'm like, okay, let's give this a year. And if you still want to do it, we'll consider it. A year went by, and she was back. I mean, I think she had it on the calendar. And so,
that calendar you mentioned just a moment ago. She must
it's another birthday.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting how things work out. I mean, my 27-year-old was 6 at the time, and he had quite an accident, had a traumatic brain injury. So we were right in the middle of an adoption process when that was going on. So that was postponed. We ended up living in Eastern Maine for 7 weeks. I slept on a little board next to the window, and he's doing great today. He's fantastic.
But how are you doing? You're a tall guy, and those boards in those rooms are.
It was rough.
Tall,
yeah. Still suffered from that. But
you should try stretching.
I'm on that. Yeah.
There's an ad on TV right now about adoption, and it's one of those ads that just resonates with me. I can't explain why, but it's sort of an older child who is clearly not fully integrated into what everyone else is doing, but throughout the 30 seconds, you can see that child just sort of become more and more part of the family. And it closes by saying something like there is nothing, no feeling that can be greater expressed than the feeling of what you're giving to that child through adoption. And it's made me take a second look at that sort of thing. What has it brought to you to be able to be the father of 4 adopted children into your family in Eastern Maine?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Dan, it's no different than the biological kids. Braden, my oldest, was 10 months when he came to live with us. Finn was 2 weeks, after he was born, and you'd throw yourself in front of a bus for any of them. Yeah. So I'm glad this comes up because anybody that's listening, I would just strongly recommend and hope to inspire folks to think about it. After we adopted these 2 girls 2 years ago, I mean, DHS was calling us once a week. The demand, unfortunately, is unbelievable. This drug thing that hit our nation was just tragic, and I think there's a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren as a result, and it's tough. I feel bad for these kids, and the longer they're in the system, the deeper the scars are.
Mm-hmm. When you adopted the kiddos, when they were kiddos, how long did it take before they began calling you dad?
Right away.
And how did that make you feel?
Oh, good. Great. Mm. Yeah. And I had experienced that.
Yeah.
When I was 6, I went from calling my stepdad dad. And kids are so resilient, and they want to have a dad, right? I mean, I always wanted to have a dad I could be proud of. I longed for it. Kids, it's a real safety net. They fall right in very quickly.
You always wanted to have a dad that you could be proud of. Are you the dad now that your kids are proud of?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How do you take all of this, the work ethic, working 3 jobs, unless there were more? We stopped counting at 3. There might be more. I'm not sure. Did you also deliver papers in the morning? Take a paper route away from a kid?
I would detail cars. Yeah, I mean, they were
Machias Valley News Observer. We out there. Ruth Lubecker was saying, here, throw these out to the... you have that in your background. You have an adoptive father in your background. How does this help you as the CEO of a bank relate to the person that is coming and saying, I got a dream, I got a business plan, I need someone to say yes?
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm that person that thinks anybody can do anything, coupled with what I would coin as extreme humility. I'm really good at being a critic of myself, and got really good at practicing, spending way too much time thinking about what could go wrong to the point of exhaustion, as we've covered. Look, I love inspiring. I love inspiring at-risk youth and others as well. But every kid and probably every human needs that person who can look them in the eye and say, you can do it. Those 4 words coming from somebody that you respect, coming from an adult, really powerful. And we can't take it for granted. And, at the end of the day, you should be looking for those people that need to hear it, because I feel bad for those that haven't. I was really fortunate to have an uncle that was just one of those people. You could spend 15 minutes with him and you could leave feeling like you could conquer the world. And he did say those words to me. He said, you can do it. And I believed him. I believed that he believed in me. And it's a game changer.
I needed to drink that in for a moment. I apologize for the silences on this side of the table as we're talking with you. Let's pivot to the bank and the success that, I know you're not alone. You're one of what? 300 or so?
300, yeah.
Right. And you mentioned humility just a moment ago. So if I call it your bank, you're probably going to say to me, no, it's ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would start by saying, when I got this job, I was interviewed by the press, and they were, wanted me to talk about my success and all that. I said, oh no. So, here's the humility was already, I'm only halfway up the mountain. And if I'm going to be successful, I got to carry this torch to the summit. And we can talk about that too, by the way. The summit, if a summit exists, it's only there for a few seconds, and then you just look off to your right and you see another peak up there, and let's go climb that one. Yeah. But make no mistake, Ed Hennessey was the founder of the culture that we have tried to continue to evolve at Machias Savings Bank. That guy was a great boss, great mentor, great businessman. Grew the bank from, probably 30 million in assets in one location on Main Street in Machias to just under $1 billion when I took over. So it really has been an incredible journey. I would share it has a lot to do with treating everybody with respect. 20 years ago, I was in my uncle's gun shop, and a retired banker was in there, and he looked at me and he said, "You'll never be a CEO." So this guy was the opposite of "you can do it." He said, "You'll never be a CEO." And he said, "Because you're too nice." As it turns out, being nice is actually a pretty good strategy, and I highly recommend it because it's been really good for us. We treat everybody with respect, and to your point, all of us are smarter than any one of us. Every single employee at Machias Savings Bank has an opportunity to contribute to our success. We ask for their opinion in many different ways throughout the year. We have the Best Places survey. 6 months later, we have our own internal engagement survey. Mm-hmm. We don't want to let a year go by without keeping a finger on the pulse of what our employees are thinking. Mm-hmm. We go around the state with what we call table talks, and we take employees to dinner, and we ask them what we're doing that's stupid. We ask them what we're doing that's working. And, we go through all of these questions. What's getting in the way of you providing great customer experience? What would you like us to see do different? And we inventory all those things, and we take the top 3 and we go to work on them. Our culture has evolved as a result of those conversations. For example, family first philosophy is one of our culture standards. If your child has a Little League game tonight, we're going to be disappointed if you're not there. If they have a game this afternoon, if there's a dance recital, we're going to pay you to be there. So family first.
I think that shows in a few different ways. And one of those ways is, I know we, through Sutherland Weston and previous to that, we've done some work with Machias Savings Bank, and the people that were always our point of contacts are still there, all of them. And I think that employee retention speaks volumes for the culture at Machias Savings Bank.
Yeah, our retention rates are about double the average. And again, I think it's a testament to just really, there's so many things that go into that. We've got a 3-page inventory of things we do to continue to manage our culture on an ongoing basis. It's a long list. We invest heavily in it, and it makes a difference. I mean, we've been a top 5 large employer in Maine for 10 consecutive years. We were number 2 in this most recent, and we don't do that for the banner. We don't do it for the accolades. We do it for the feedback. And those surveys really are good, and you get a lot of great feedback across the organization, and we act on it. Also, among the best banks in the country for a number of years in a row. So this American Banker takes those same surveys from the Best Places survey.
Yeah.
And they compare them against the banks from across the nation. So, I mean, we've been as high as in the top 10 in the nation. I forget the number this year, but again, very, very proud of. Look, I always say we can only raise the bar on customer experience as high as we've raised it on employee experience. Can't raise it any higher than that. So we got to take care of our employees if we want them to take care of customers.
Based on your background of achievement and driving yourself to achievement and to work, how do you not let that demon come back?
Yep, it's a great question. It's a great question. You got to. It's more of an art than a science, because I love to put in a good day's work. I love the feeling. I mean, I won't leave Bangor tonight until 8 or 9 o'clock, because I've got an event to go to at the Cross Center this evening, and I'll feel good. But you can't do that every day. Can't do. You got to keep a finger on the pulse, and you got to be mindful of it and aware of it. And so,
well, let me draw a parallel question to that, and that is, the levels of success and the achievements the bank has made, best places to work, best bank. It would be very easy to see a year where, okay, we got to win again. Yep. We got to achieve this again.
Yep.
We've got to earn this again. How do you not become a slave to that need for rhythmic success?
Right. Well, I mean, you do that for 35 years, and there's an element of that that's turns into adrenaline, and you do thrive on it, and it drives you, and you enjoy it. I mean, I think the key is you got to have fun with it, and it can't. You can't. It's interesting if I looked back over 35 years and say, what would I do different? I would like to say, have more fun with it. I could have been a lot less hard on myself and been just as successful. I thought I always had this subconscious, feeling if I stop doing that, I'm going to lose my edge.
Oh yeah.
It's just next shoe's going to drop. It's all going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. It's going to blow up, and that'll be the end of it. But the longer you stay in the game, the more experience you get, the more amazing people you get to surround yourself with and have conversations with. And I just feel so blessed to have relationships with so many great business people across Maine and New Hampshire, and gosh, beyond that. Over time, you develop an appreciation for the fact that every business person that I know has gotten good at making lemonade from lemons. There's got to be lemons. You gotta, that's part of it. And you got to stay the course, and you can't beat yourself up, and you look for the opportunity. You play the hand you dealt, and you can't take it too serious, which, I got pretty good at that over the years.
When you first got the job that you have now, would you have had the confidence to feel this same way back then?
Not at all.
So,
in fact,
instead of telling somebody you can do it, what do you tell somebody who's, let's say that you have a chance to have a conversation with a young Larry Barker. You're still young, a younger Larry Barker than you are today. What would you tell him?
Well, that's such an awesome question, because I will sit here today and say, if you want to be successful, you better outwork everybody in sight. But there's an evolutionary process there. I mean, if you're young, I would say you got a pretty good opportunity today to do that, because a lot fewer people today, just by virtue of post-pandemic and everything, people value their time a lot more. Young people want flexibility. They want freedom. If you're that person that wants to be successful, go to work and outwork everybody in sight. but invest in yourself every day. And I think you can still do that. You know, when I look back, I was in the office at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, you know, for 15 years. But I wasn't alone. Ed Hennessey was in the office at 6 a.m.
Wow.
And so, I mean, if you rolled in at 6:30, you'd say, where you been?
Parker!
No, I'm telling you, we had a guy that lived 45 minutes out of town, and he'd come in at 6:30, and it was, where you been? I felt bad for the guy. Gosh. So, you know, you have to work. You have to outwork. But I will also say, Dan, young people today have such an incredible advantage.
Do you feel like the values that you have are being picked up by your kids?
I do. I really do. So far, so good. Yeah, I mean the kids are doing right. They're all down east. We've got 4 grandkids now. Number 5 on the way. There's 15 of us around the dinner table 3 or 4 nights a week. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
There must be no better feeling.
It's really cool. I mean, the grocery bill is ridiculous.
Milk. Seen the price of milk?
I'm lactose intolerant. It doesn't apply.
You know, we take them all on vacation with us. We went to Florida for 2 weeks.
We're going to ask that.
Of us.
Do you take a vacation?
Every 3 months, I take 2 weeks.
Really?
So I take the first 2 weeks of July. I've been doing that for years. November, I'm at hunting camp for 2 weeks. And in March, we're taking the family to Florida for 2 weeks.
Going on vacation with your family is not a vacation. For some.
Best 2 weeks of the year.
Really?
We look forward to it. I mean, we rent a big house and everybody's in the house. And gosh, it's just made a lot of memories. And the kids look forward to it. And it's just really cool watching that 6-year-old pulling the luggage through the airport, and she thinks she's a big deal, and you know, she's a pro now. I mean, she's been going for a few years.
You know, I have one brother, but and 2 kids.
The smart, funny, successful one.
Yes, exactly, and the good-looking one too. But growing up, each of my parents had 5 brothers and sisters, and they all had kids. So I had 16 first cousins on both sides, so 32 total. But when we'd go to one side or the other, and we'd have a gathering with all the first cousins and all of the adults, the aunts and uncles, there was this just noise, not white noise, but just noise. And you were always trying to talk over the noise. And I can't tell you, as I've gotten older, how much I miss that. And when I'm in a room where there's that noise, it gives me this nostalgia of sitting on the living room floor and playing war with one of my cousins with the deck of cards and, you know, eating leftover turkey from Thanksgiving. And that's got to be how it feels when you have all 15 of you in that house when you go on vacation.
It really is. And we grew up with a similar phenomenon. I mean, there were 9 cousins, you know, the aunts and uncles, grandparents. I mean, we get together for Thanksgiving and Christmas and always look forward to it and love that noise. It's funny. The wife and I were sitting on the couch earlier this week, and nobody was home for about 10 minutes. And it was really quiet. I looked at my wife and said, this is what we'd be doing without the kids, grandkids. Like, what are we going to do now? Let's go for a ride. We got to
Thanks for listening to the Ric and Dan Show.
Now, what would Dan say right now? Nothing smart. If you like what you heard, don't suppose you'd click that subscribe button.
And maybe leave us a review on your favorite listening platform.
5 stars are our favorite.
And next time you hear someone say,
you can't get there from here,
you tell them to listen to the Ric and Dan Show.